Hello everyone, Britt here from Scrappy Boy Stamps, and today we're going to do a tutorial for the mason jar die. You will have 5 main pieces for this box die. We're going to take the plain base layer and cut it 3 times. Once for the front of the box, once for the back of the box, and 1 acetate layer. This die set contains 2 base layers that are identical in size, but one is plain and the other has a stitched outline. For this example, I'm going to use the base layer with the stitched outline in order to create my shaker window, along with the interior matted layer from the base dies. These base layers can be used interchangeably, but for this example, I wanted the extra detail of the stitching on the outside of our box. Additionally, we will cut the mason jar lid. For this example, I've only cut it once for the front of the box, but if you would like to cut it twice, you can to add the lid to the back of the box as well. Finally, we will cut this strip that looks like a strip of tickets. I like to call this the magic box maker. We'll cut this piece once to complete our project. The remaining dies in this set are all optional. They give you tons of ways to customize your finished project and make it your own. First, we're going to cut a few things that I won't be using for this particular project. We have a label die with a stitched outline, perfect for a sentiment. A straight straw, great for creating boba drinks and smoothies. The next die creates 5 different size hearts, great for shaker filler or just to put some adorable little hearts around your finished project. And the last die that I am not using on the first example is this homemade word die. It looks very cute on top of the label. Next, you have this boba die. It also creates great shaker filler, and I've cut it multiple times in different colors to create the mix that I need for my project. We also have a bendy straw accessory for our mason jar, and 3 pieces in order to construct pieces of citrus fruit. This is the citrus base, the wedge piece, that will make 4 wedges, and the rind piece. Now later on in the video, I'll tell you how you can combine these and make a 4th piece and really layer up your citrus fruits and get a perfect look. Lastly, we have 2 pieces of ice, which today I have cut with acetate. Before we begin our assembly, I have a shaker card hack for you. I create most of my shakers with dollar store foam board. Yes, dollar store foam board. It does go through my die cutting machine. I just use low tack tape to make sure that my dies are spaced perfectly, and then cut as many foam layers as I need to make my shaker card. Just remember to use caution and don't ever force anything through your die cutting machine. We wouldn't want anything to happen to it. We'll begin our assembly by stacking our foam pieces and the front shaker window with liquid adhesive. Don't be afraid to remove some of the adhesive if you feel like you're going to have too much. You don't want any to come out the sides if you can help it, because that will make your shaker bits stick to the sides of your shaker window, and you want all your shaker bits to be able to float around inside of your window freely. Once you've stacked your foam, go ahead and add your acetate in the same way, making sure again that there is not excess glue. It's very difficult, in my opinion, to get glue off of acetate. It can be done, but it's always better to be conservative with the liquid glue so that you don't have that problem in the first place. It's also a great idea to allow 25 to 30 seconds or more for anything attached to your acetate to dry. Acetate is a non-porous surface, meaning that the glue doesn't adhere as quickly to it as it does to something like paper or cardstock. And you don't want to spend all of that time making a shaker card for the acetate to just pop right off of the front and ruin all of your work. To finish off our shaker front, we'll add our mason jar lid. I love to cut this piece with metallic paper. It really adds an authentic mason jar look to your project. Once everything is adhered, you'll want to set that aside to dry, and we can move on to the back wall of our shaker card. When I first saw this die set, I knew I wanted to create your quintessential classic jar of lemonade. One of the quickest and easiest ways to create depth and interest inside of a shaker is to create a blended background. And this masking technique is really easy to do, and you just use the dies that are already in the die set in order to create your mask. I attached a piece of low-tack tape to a waxy spare bit of paper and then used my largest layer die to create this square mask. Then I placed the mask over the top half of the die cut piece, masking off the sections that I do not yet want to ink. I started with my lightest yellow and filled in the entire bottom section with a sunny lemonade color. Then, once the lightest yellow was laid down, I used a slightly darker yellow shade in order to bring some depth into each the right and the left side of the jar and at that seam where the mask transitions into the inked piece. It's always a good idea to keep checking and making sure that all of the depth you've added with your inking can be seen once the top of the shaker has been added. It just ensures you'll be able to make some adjustments before you move on to the next step. Peel the mask away carefully to reveal that crisp line of inking that you've just created, and make sure that you don't discard your mask. You can use it for other projects later on. To complete the background, mask off the section directly above the inking you completed in step 1. The curve on the bottom of the mask should go the opposite direction, completing the oval at the top of the masked section. Feel free to cut a separate mask for this step, but it worked just fine for me to use the negative bit that came off when I had created my first square mask, and then I just covered the rest of the open top of the jar with extra low-tack tape. Once the mask is in place, fill in the white area with the lightest lemon color, and then add depth and shadow by laying down the next darkest yellow shade on the seam where your background piece and the mask meet. Once you're happy with your inking, go ahead and carefully peel off that second mask, and easy peasy lemon squeezy, your jar is full of lemonade. I just love the effect that this technique gives, and the best part is, no matter what you want to put in your mason jar, all you have to do is change up your colors, and it works the exact same way every time. The results are always amazing. I can't wait to try coffee or iced tea next. You can set this panel aside while we move on to putting together our slices of lemon. Earlier in the video, I promised that I would teach you the technique to take the 3 existing pieces of the citrus fruit and make a perfect 4th piece in order to add interest and depth to your citrus embellishment. First, prepare the other pieces. You'll cut the base citrus piece in a light yellow, the wedges in a medium yellow, and the rind piece in a darker yellow. Then set aside. Then, to create the extra piece, first, cut the base piece again in white cardstock. I do recommend using a good quality white cardstock to create this. The resulting piece has fine details, and a good quality cardstock will give you better results. Next, use the rind die to cut into the base piece in order to remove the part of the base that isn't needed. For the cleanest cut, make sure that the rind is hanging ever so slightly off of the base piece. It helps to secure it with a piece of low-tack tape before cutting it with your die cutting machine. Once die cut, you should be able to discard the 2 smaller pieces, and the 1 larger piece of the base should remain. But feel free to keep those pieces. You can always use them on projects in the future. Just ink them up to whatever color you need, and you have a piece already cut. If you wanted to, you could stop here and simply layer the wedge pieces on top of this white, smaller half-moon shape. But I wanted to inlay my pieces, so let me show you how I achieved that. Layer your wedge die on top of the white base piece. It should fit very, very well. Secure with low-tack tape and run this through your die cutting machine to create the veins in your citrus piece. I highly recommend not skipping the tape on this step. Even if you have to cut into it a little bit, it's easily removed from the other side of your die cut, and it ensures that there will be very little shifting of the die as you run it through your die cutting machine. I also wanted to make sure that you knew that you absolutely do not have to create this piece. But I love the look that I created with this extra step, and I wanted to make sure that you knew how to assemble it if this was what you wanted to do as well. Once your pieces are cut, it is very simple to put together. You attach the piece that we made first, surrounding it with the rind, before placing each wedge to complete your lemon slice. This die set in particular has so many different possibilities, and it's all as simple as picking a different theme and changing up your color scheme, and you can do tons and tons of different things with only your imagination as a limit. Off camera, I've assembled 2 more lemon wedges and cut a bunch more optional pieces. Now it's time to get everything out and start assembling our box. Although I didn't add stamped images to this particular project, I did want to highlight the adorable paper from the Thank You for Being a Friend collection. It goes so well with the images, but so many of the papers in this collection have a summery, tropical feel, and I think they would be great to use with any summer theme project. It had the perfect stripe for me to use for my bendy straw, and it inspired the other colors that I used in this design. The first step in assembling our shaker is to adhere the bendy straw to the background panel. We want to make sure that the straw is completely flat on the background and that we are conservative with our glue so our sequins and shaker bits don't get stuck to the bottom of the straw. Since I'm including larger elements inside the shaker, I like to addition them a little bit before I make my final decision. That way I can make sure everything fits relatively well before I put the glue on and close it up for good. I admit 3 lemon wedges might have been a lot, but I love the final look, and even though it covered up a little of my background, I think it was totally worth it to include them in the end. Another shaker tip, particularly if you're using larger elements inside, is to put the smaller items in first. Put your large items in last. Although things will mix around, it's more likely that your smaller items will stay in the front, and the larger items will stay in the back, making it so that you can see everything once your shaker is complete. Once all of your elements are added, it's time to use that liquid glue so that you can apply the back piece to the shaker. Honestly, people are in different camps about what kind of adhesive you should use for this application, but I still believe in the liquid adhesive because even when you turn over your shaker, it still gives you a little bit of wiggle room to make sure everything is lined up perfectly. Once you're sure everything is lined up correctly, I would leave it for a little while before doing too much shaking so that you can make sure that much of your glue is going to be dried, which will help your shaker bits to just keep flowing freely instead of being stuck to the side of your shaker. After it's been left to dry for a minute or so, we're ready to assemble our box. You'll need the shaker you assembled, the back panel that you've cut earlier, and the most versatile piece in this whole set, this magic box maker. Now, I call it that because even though this was specifically designed to fit the mason jar die, I believe that this is your ticket to being able to make little boxes out of tons of your die sets. All the scoring is done for you by the die. All you have to do is fold on the score lines, reinforce those folds with your bone folder, and just like that, your box is ready to attach to your project. Now, you know I'm a big fan of any liquid adhesive because of how versatile it is. But for this particular application, I would really recommend that you use some sort of strong tape adhesive. Both red tape and score tape are great choices, and for this project in particular, I would advise that you use 1/8 of an inch size tape. When it comes to 3D projects, you don't want as much wiggle room with the structural pieces because it might actually wiggle out of place. Once your tape is attached and you take off the backing, it's easier to press down the long bottom section and then bring each side section up to make sure that you attach each side straight up and down. Once your box is in position where you want it, it's best to burnish over the places where your adhesive lies to make sure you reinforce that strong hold. Now, here is a do as I say, not as I do moment. I definitely should have put the red tape on both sides of the box. It would have been much easier to have it already applied, so all that I had to do is remove the backing. But sometimes it's better to know that everybody makes mistakes, and it really turned out fine in the end. It just took me a little finagling to get that red tape on the box when it was already adhered on one side. When it comes to lining up the front and the back panel, to be perfectly honest, I just eyeballed it and didn't really press down until those two pieces were aligned like I wanted them to be. And there she is, ready to shake, shake, shake the summer away. It is just the cutest little box. This one in particular, I think, would be very cute for a bachelorette with one of those tiny little bottles of vodka and maybe a packet of lemonade. So cute. I did want to show you that you could add a personal message to the back of the box by just cutting out that matting layer and adding either a stamped sentiment or a handwritten message. And oh my God, you guys, I'm from California and the boba love here is so real. This was the perfect Valentine for a friend. I love you more than boba is a very serious claim here. So if you love someone more than boba, you really love them. I honestly can't wait to make more of these. Iced tea, iced coffee, jams and jellies. The possibilities really are endless. Thank you so much for sticking around for this tutorial today. We love you in our little community, and we really could not do this without you. This die set is just one of the new fun things in the newest release from Scrappy Boy Stamps. Head over to the links that are down in the bio to see the rest of the new collection. And make sure you're following us on Instagram and part of our Facebook group. My fellow design team members are amazing, and they have some wonderful inspiration for you this month. They always do amazing work, and you should be following each one of them too. Make sure you like this video, leave a comment, and especially subscribe. We post videos all month long. Here are a couple for you to check out. Thanks so much for watching. I love you more than boba. Bye-bye.